It's still hard today to sit back and think about what happened. We from 18 months to now, as a family, we've been through one of the hardest things ever. If anything out of this is just one family not to go through the heartache and the pain.
It's devastating. It changes everybody's lives.
It was just a 50cc, it wasn't a big bike, thinking it won't go very fast, it'll be okay. Everything went wrong.
They're a dreadful thing to go through. You know, what Mario's been through and Jodie and myself.
I'm a emergency service worker. I'm a station officer for Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. Not once did I ever think that I'd have to render assistance to one of my own family. We're in a small rural community called Atherton. We're approximately an hour and a half west of Cairns. A very good friend of mine. He's probably my best friend. He's got two boys, and one of them's about the same age as Domenic, one's a bit older. And his oldest boy, it was his 10th birthday. So we decided to go to Tinaroo, to have a bit of an afternoon, and the boys played and swam, and it was just a really good fun afternoon.
And there was a footy grand finals, and then I said, Mario said we go back and watch a footy.
The boys come in asking Frank if they could ride the motorbike.
Frank's two boys had ridden the quad bike first. They both had a go first. And then Dominic's like, no, I want to do it by myself. I want to have a go by myself. I can do it, Mum. So I had to sort of, I assessed it, went through where the brakes were, same braking system as his BMX bike. I then put him in the bike and him in the direction where it was nice and flat. I went through those safety precautions in my head, still thinking that he was capable of riding the bike and being able to control it. So everything that went through my head, those safety steps that went through my head, all went wrong.
And I remember we were just sitting back and the national anthem came on and the kids come running in.
All I could remember was my youngest one, Jesse, come in screaming.
And they just kept yelling, Domenic, Domenic, Domenic.
He was probably on that bike for 5 seconds, if that, and just went full throttle. And while I was yelling out to him, stop, stop, put the brakes on, the bike hit the power pole, which Domenic was then thrown off the bike, and then he landed down onto the bitumen road. When I picked him up off the road, I didn't know if he was alive.
As I walked out the door, I seen Jodie running up. She was basically carrying, and he was limp. His arms were flapping. And yelling, call an ambulance, there's been an accident. I started dialing 000 on the mobile phone, and she said to me, he's not breathing, he's not breathing. So I took him and placed him on the ground, and instinct just kicked in, and just laid him on the ground, put his head back.
I remember screaming at Mario, make him breathe, he has to breathe.
I got him breathing again, and then he was bleeding from the back of his head, and I remember his eyes were just rolling, and the gurgling sound that was coming out of his throat. And I just kept telling him, Domenic, stay with me, mate, just stay with me.
So we were airborne on our way to Mount Garnet at the time, and we got a call to divert the helicopter to Atherton Hospital. You had a young boy on a quad bike. Mechanism of injury was the bike versus a power pole. Wasn't wearing a helmet. You absolutely are thinking that it's quite serious and it's quite significant what's happened.
The emergency doctor off the helicopter said to me, look, we're going to take him to Townsville. We're going to put him in an induced coma. And I just looked at him and said, I'm coming with you. I remember landing in Townsville and getting off the chopper. Remember them wheeling him out of the ICU and taking him down for the operation, like a scene out of a movie. They stopped and I sort of kissed him. I said, "Dad's here, mate. Love you. You're going to be all right." He was in his coma, but he was tossing and turning, and the nurses were trying to calm him down, and I was standing there and said, "Don't worry, mate, Dad's here. Dad's right here." And he sort of stopped, looked at me and put his arms out, and so I gave him a cuddle, and he sort of tapped me on the back saying, "Everything's all right, Dad." Even though he was in this coma, he could still hear me and say it's all good. We didn't know when they brought him out of his coma whether what he'd be like, whether he could walk, talk, be the same kid. We were told he'd never have the same personality. He bruised all the nerve endings in his brain. He's actually shook it.
And when you get an impact to the skull, you tend to get two injuries. Firstly, the injury at the point of impact to the skull and the brain underneath there. And secondly, an injury called a counter-coup injury, which is basically where the brain rebounds and you may get another injury sort of opposite the initial injury.
Around 1 in 5 of all serious incident on quad bikes is brain trauma. If people are wearing a helmet, a correctly fitted helmet, then they reduce that risk of that.
The doctors told us that, be prepared to be in Townsville for 3 to 6 months.
Oh, it was shocking. I mean, I was down in Townsville the next day just to be beside him. And, it wasn't a good feeling.
We just had to stay positive, and if the outcome was that he needed permanent care, long-time care, whatever it was, we were going to do it. It didn't matter.
Olivia she was found it the hardest, so she's seen the whole thing happen. Something that you wouldn't want a 5-year-old to see,
She wouldn't go up to Dominic's bed when he was in ICU, didn't want to touch him because he had tubes coming out of him and all the machines that were behind his bed. Because he got that initial care so quickly and so soon, that had helped then with his recovery. So he'd have sessions with physio, OT, speech therapist.
Within 5 weeks we were coming home, compared to what we were told originally by the ICU doctor. And to see him 18 months later, he's back on the BMX track, he's running, he's playing. So he was a fighter, definitely a fighter.
If Domenic was wearing a helmet the day of his incident, he probably wouldn't have gone through all of the pain and suffering that he's gone through and that his family have gone through. It may have been a very, very different set of circumstances.
With quad bike injuries, the regular occurrence you'll see is either head injuries, falling off a bike, injuries associated with crushing, either the bike landing on top of them.
When children are operating any vehicle, any quad bike, they need to understand the limitations, and the best person to do that is mum or dad.
It comes back to parents' responsibility to ensure that these kids know how to handle these things. If they're going to put them on there, the right size for the right child, making sure that they know how to handle it. Domenic was inexperienced.
When people receive quad bike training from an accredited trainer, they're going to learn a range of skills, and those skills are going to help them to operate the quad bike safely.
Before you put your kids on the bike, make sure they've got helmet, safety and knowledge to riding the bike too. I mean, a little machine is powerful.
Investing in the right personal protective equipment for your child when they're operating a quad bike, it's a very, very small investment to make when you compare that for the consequences of not wearing a helmet.
In Dominic's case, he was inexperienced. I assumed that he knew what he was doing, that he was able to, operate the quad bike, but yeah, I was wrong.
just to stop that one family from going through it is something that we hope to achieve. We've been lucky. We know of other families that haven't been so lucky. And this is something that, you know, carry for the rest of our lives.
I remember getting on it, but I don't really remember taking off on it. I woke up in ICU. Don't actually know what it all means. I don't remember that much in there, but I do remember I got to watch the Lorax.